The following video will cover the instructions to fill out and complete the one-page paper assignments for CJ205. As part of the course requirements, 2 supplemental reading articles are going to be assigned during the semester. The articles are designed to supplement the text and other coursework. The articles are articles that have appeared in academic journals, trade publications. They're essays that have appeared in various publications on the internet, in trade publications, or on the editorial page of newspapers. Part of the assignment is that each student will complete 2 one-page single-spaced or 2 pages double-spaced memorandums discussing the articles and the content of the information contained therein. What I'm looking for with grading those 2 papers is going to be a critical reading of the articles and an analysis of the opinion that is presented in the article. The articles will almost uniformly be written by people who are in the political leadership of our federal, state, and local government. They will be articles that have been prepared and written by people who are say a cabinet secretary like the U.S. Attorney General or your state Attorney General, or a person who is a manager or another policy maker in the criminal justice system. As an example might be an article written by, say, a police chief, or an article written by the district attorney or the county prosecutor, or by a municipal prosecutor. The purpose of the article and the reason why I ask you to prepare these 2 memorandums during the course is that, one, I want you to take a look at the current topics that are emerging in the law enforcement field. While policing in the United States, or at least modern policing, dates back to the 1840s, there is still continuing evolution of thought on the proper way to police and to maintain order in our society. So again, you'll be looking at the opinions of researchers, and there you'll see a lot of work written by academics, also people who are working in research staffs as analysts, and basically they're the criminal justice policy makers, and we want to know what they're thinking about and why they're thinking about doing the things that they are looking to do. And again, as I had indicated in the last slide, our articles are simply to supplement the text and the course lectures. While reading through the articles, a lot of students will try to get through them quickly. I know you have a workload with my course and with other courses that you are taking. But what I would like you to do as you're working your way through these things is to think about why the writer is taking the position on the topic that's at hand. Why does that author believe that his or her position is correct? And then I want you to take a look at your opinion of his or her opinion. Is that author correct? And I want you to tell me why or why not. And I don't want you to just read the article and treat it as a comic strip or a cartoon or a newspaper. Back up your response. Tell me why you believe this individual has a good idea or a bad idea, and then put some evidence in there to back up what your thoughts are. You can supplement your opinion and your view on this topic from your other reading, past coursework, current coursework, and if you're going to use any outside sources, go ahead and document the outside sources. It is helpful to me to get an idea not only for grading your paper, but also for the future use of this exercise in my courses to get an idea of what it is that you as students are reading. Okay, regarding my course and our assignment at hand, your written assignments will be graded. A lot of students get brain freeze and they just, oh, I don't know what to put down. So some of the more creative things that have been done is to increase the font from, say, Times New Roman 12 or the Bell MT 12 or 11. Make it a 15 or a 20. That doesn't work. It will get the paper sent back to you, as would anything else that an employer or any other person looking at your work and seeing that you've taken the quick way out would do. What I'm going to be looking at more than anything else is the content of what's there. I want to see your analysis of that subject matter presented in the article. And in a couple minutes I'm going to go through an example so that you should have a pretty good handle on what it is that I'm trying to get from you. And finally, just your writing on these articles is going to be part of your course grade. Because of the shortened term you're going to have during the summer one semester, which this course is being run, we're going to meet approximately 10 times over an 8-week period, and I'm going to be counting these papers as 20% of your grade. So it's imperative that you take a critical look at the material that you're being given. Moving on to the next issue here, I'm going to suggest this outline for the preparation of the papers. The suggested outline is not something you absolutely have to stick to, but I'm hoping to kind of boil down for you into 3 or 4 easy steps what it is you're going to be looking at, and give you a semi-structured way to take a look at that problem. So the first thing that you're going to do after reading the article that is the topic that you'll be writing on will be to take a look at the issue or to identify the problem at hand. We really just want to know simply is what's being discussed in the paper and why is it a problem. For example, one of the issues that has come up in the last several weeks with the bombing at the Boston Marathon was the U.S. Attorney, Eric Holder, sent a federal magistrate and several FBI agents to Boston to Mirandize the one surviving member of this team that set off these bombs at the end of the race. Now, one of the things that every law enforcement officer and every criminal understands thoroughly is that once you've been read that Miranda warning, thou shalt not talk to law enforcement, because anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. And it's usually a good way to get your suspect to shut up. And if your suspect has a decent attorney, and many of them are going to be represented by an attorney when there's an incident of that gravity or that seriousness, they'll stop talking. So that has come up is the issue of Miranda, which is still relatively a new ruling. That's only been 50 years in our country, where we've actually the Miranda ruling was handed down in 1966. We've gone on. We're pushing 50 years now of people being told they have the right to remain silent. They have the right to consult with an attorney. They have the right to have that attorney present while they're being questioned. If they refuse to answer the questions, they're allowed to do that, and there can't be any retribution or any kind of inference made by law enforcement or by a jury at a trial that because a person elected to remain silent, that jury cannot be told by a judge that, they can infer a person's guilt because, why would an innocent man remain quiet? Well, we know the AG sent somebody up there, and he's the law enforcement officer, chief law enforcement officer in the country, and they basically got this guy to shut up. And apparently, there's some controversy over it because he was actually talking to the law enforcement agencies and the law enforcement agents who were interviewing him. So that issue of Miranda is back out there again. So, that's been the subject of an article. And that's what we would want to identify is what are they talking about here. The next thing we're going to want to take a look at is what is the current practice? For example, how does the criminal justice system, or in our case here, the police, deal with the problem that's at hand? Typically with an emergent matter or an emergent situation like a bombing, the police would continue questioning, and if the suspect initiated the conversation with the law enforcement agent, then there's really no problem with letting him talk and asking him questions. It does not violate the intent or the spirit or the rules governing Miranda. However, once the police read the Miranda warning, or the suspect says that I want my lawyer, we then encounter something that a court dealt with in a case about 15 years ago called Minnick versus Mississippi. And the courts have established that there's something called a bright line rule. In other words, you shall not cross this bright line, that once the suspect says that he or she wants their attorney, the questioning ceases until the attorney's present. So that's the current practice. The next thing we're going to want to look at is the current practice successful? Well, Minnick may work just fine as far as policing and public safety go, as far as dealing with a homicide where you have one American citizen who has killed another American citizen, or a robbery, or an aggravated assault, or something along those lines. But here we have two individuals who set off a bomb. We do know, as the media is starting to put information out on this, that these people have traveled overseas recently. Are they working for a foreign government? Is this really just one American citizen attacking other American citizens? We don't know that. So is that current practice applicable to what's going on in Boston? And then the next thing we're going to look at, does the author see this as the current practice as a problem, and do they want to make a change in how things are done? And if they do want to make a change, we move into our next step, which is going to be the author's proposed solution to this problem. And you're almost uniformly with these articles going to encounter somebody making an argument that current practice or procedure is out of date or doesn't apply, and they're going to propose another way of handling the problem. So that's what we'll look at. What does that author suggest to fix what he or she perceives as the problem? And why does the author think that this fix will work? Is it going to make it a better practice of what law enforcement does? The next thing you're going to need to do then is going to be to take a look at it. What's your opinion? Should the system and the procedure be changed? Or do you believe that the current practice is a better way to go? Tell me why. If you have experience in the area, for example, I've had police officers, I've had politicians, I've had people who are practitioners in the criminal justice system because they work in courts or corrections or somewhere else, come through my courses in the past, and their experience can be quite helpful and insightful. You'll hear me talk during the course about my experience as a police officer, and the problem is that at the time I worked as a police officer in southern New Jersey, I was one of about 40,000 police officers in New Jersey, which means there's 39,999 more stories out there of what's good practice and what's not. So if you have something to share, tell us about it. Okay, to help you at least get your legs under you so that you understand what it is that I'm asking you to do here, I'm going to take a look at a paper, and I'm going to call it for our purposes here Paper 1. And it's an article that appeared on the Cato Institute's website not too long ago. There's also a podcast out there, and I will make every effort to locate the podcast and put that podcast up on Campus Cruiser so that you may review it. And the thing there is the paper is written by Malu Innocent and Medea Benjamin. Innocent and Benjamin are both researchers at the Cato Institute, which is a think tank that is located in Washington, D.C. And the subject of the paper, or the title of the paper, is Look Up in the Sky and See a Drone. The issue of drones is becoming a current topic in law enforcement. Our experience with the drones has been generally positive in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, parts of Saudi Arabia, and also in Iraq. The drones were developed as a way for American armed forces to target members of Al Qaeda and other terrorists and make an effort to terminate their existence on this planet as a way of improving public safety and making the situation better for mankind in general. Now, as the wars are winding down and President Obama has seen fit that he is going to begin withdrawing troops from Iraq and from Afghanistan, we have a number of manufacturers out there who are building these drones, and they are looking for other ways to put them to use. Last year, the Congress made some changes to the Federal Aviation's rules and regulations and laws, and the FAA also changed, based on the new laws, changed some of the regulations regarding the use of drones by law enforcement agencies. And in fact, they're trying to encourage the law enforcement agencies to begin using drones as a method of policing and to assist in policing. And there are a number of civil libertarians, particularly since the Cato Institute is a libertarian organization. They really do have a problem with the use of the drones by governments at the state, federal, and the local level. So, before you continue on with this, in this video, one of the things you're going to want to do is go on to Campus Cruiser into the shared files area, download a copy of the paper. It will be titled drones.pdf. And you can read that article and then restart from this point. I would like you to follow along as I begin discussing what I would do were I assigned a paper to talk about the law enforcement use of drones. Okay, using the outline that I had put forward earlier in this presentation, let's take a look at the use of these aerial drones and unmanned aircraft. The issue here is, and the problem identification is simply this. The police are beginning to use unmanned aerial drones for a variety of law enforcement needs. One of the areas where the drones are currently being applied is along the southern and southwestern borders, from roughly Texas to California, as a way to help identify locations where people from Mexico, Central and South America are coming across the southern border into the United States illegally. Additionally, law enforcement agencies have figured out that they can fly these drones over people's property and over airspace, and have a look and see what's going on the ground. Uh, it's basically, when we get right down to it, the police are beginning to adapt a successful military use, and that is the use of these aerial drones to carry out a mission. And for the military, we did see that there was quite a bit of use of the drones during the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, where they were used for surveillance and targeted killings. Civilian police are making the case that they should be buying the drones because they are helpful in performing search and rescue functions. They help with monitoring fires. They're very valuable with drug enforcement. As an example, the largest cash crops in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, New York, each summer is marijuana. Marijuana has a rather unusual color green, and from an aircraft, a police officer or law enforcement agents flying over a farm field are able to easily identify marijuana because of its unique green color. Uh, Law enforcement agencies are figuring out that they now don't have to put those expensive several $1,000 an hour helicopter and fixed wing aircraft up in the air. You can go out and pick up a drone for maybe $1,000 or a couple $1,000. Put an inexpensive digital camera on that, or an expensive camera that will provide a digital live feed from the drone, and fly that piece of equipment over any farm field or anywhere that it's suspected that marijuana or drugs are being grown, manufactured, or packaged for transportation and eventual consumption. Additionally, civilian police are finding out that as the technology improved greatly in the 10 years that our armed forces were in Afghanistan and Iraq, the ability of these drones to stay aloft for several hours to several days to several weeks is pretty good. And the technology has been improving because manufacturers have put good engineers to work on the problem. And we're finding out that surveillance is one of these things that we can do very well with a drone. We can go out, we can put the drone, put that thing aloft, and leave it up there for a week or so, and it's really not a big deal. So we then roll on to our big question here, which is simply, is the use of the drones by law enforcement and civilian law enforcement agencies compatible with a free society? That's going to be the key question. And if you need to, just further reinforce how important that question really is, many of you should remember that several weeks ago, Rand Paul held up the confirmation in the U.S. Senate of a official that that President Obama wanted appointed as, to a national security position until the Attorney General and the President would provide the U.S. Senate with a firm answer on when it was actually legal for the federal government to target an American citizen, and if that the federal government would be legally allowed to target an American citizen on American soil without having first gone to court to get a warrant to kill or otherwise incapacitate that individual. So there is quite a bit going on with this, and we just want to know, is the use compatible with a free society? And in the alternative, for those of us who have been studying the political science area for a while, have we really gone to 1984? And those of you who have seen that movie and read that book, one of the things that did occur in that movie was that in addition to the telescreens that the government in the movie 1984 employed, uh, one of the things they also employed was the helicopters, and they would fly the helicopters right up alongside apartment buildings and look in each one of the apartments. And the drones make this very easy. And in addition, something that the people who put that movie together and also the author of the book, George Orwell, would not have been able to conceive was the idea that we now have the ability to computer enhance our digital photography in almost real time, and this is an issue that is something that we need to look at. Okay, moving on to our ninth slide here. Let's take a look at where we're at with this. Our current practice for law enforcement, police are generally going to respond to anything involving a need for search and rescue, where fire equipment is employed, uh, whether it be a forest fire, a house fire, a structure fire in a commercial building. Police are going to respond. They're going to try to maintain order at the scene, which is generally easily accomplished, and uh, see if they can figure out how the fire started, and if it was an arson, to see if they can identify the arsonist. During the course, I will talk a little bit about arsonists. One thing that is very surprising with this, and those of you who are psychology majors may want to consider this as a future paper, but arsonists, oddly enough, do tend to stay in the crowd at the uh, fires they start. There are a variety of reasons for this, but it's just something to consider. The police are well aware of this, as are firefighters. And frequently, when there's a major structure fire and it's believed to be an arson, the police officers will very frequently be out there working the crowd and talking to people in the crowd who are watching the fire companies put the fire out. And the reason they're doing that is they're looking for the arsonist. So, uh, current practice, it's pretty normal to see the police at any fires. Uh, in current practice, one of the things that for police is that they would be required to get a search warrant if they're engaged in some type of search or activity that is likely to where an individual would have a reasonable expectation of privacy, and police are involved in drug enforcement or drug enforcement investigations, and where things that would not normally be seen from the street or plainly visible from the air, um, police have to go get a warrant. Where things are hidden by foliage, fences, um, and generally not visible from the street, and you see the term there, curtilage. Uh, that's a term that comes out of the search and seizure cases, where the courts have generally deemed it that the curtilage, which is the area immediately around a house, you might look at it as your carport, uh, you know, somewhere where people would not normally go unless they lived there. Requires police officers to obtain a search warrant before they can look in those areas for illegal activity. Um, some types of surveillance require a search warrant. For example, if the police are using any kind of an enhanced way to look into the residence, for example, infrared, or some other type of intrusive device, the forward-looking infrared or something along those lines, police may be required to get a search warrant depending on local law and local practice. At the federal level, they frequently are required to get a warrant. Okay, so now that we've identified the issue and the problem, which is going to be the police's and the public safety need for surveillance, um, we also know now that current practices is that anything intrusive is going to pretty much require law enforcement or public safety officers to obtain a search warrant. We want to take a look at where we're going with the drones and the use of surveillance. Our authors here again are researchers at the Cato Institute, and as I had indicated in an earlier slide, the Cato Institute tends to be the libertarians. There are people who, as far as their political view goes, they tend to be very conservative on economics uh, and on most social policies. But in most areas where there's potential for government intrusion, one, they seek very small government with a very limited role in society. And uh, if the police or the government has to get involved in some aspect of society, especially where enforcement is concerned, the libertarians tend to look at things along the lines of any government intrusion should require an order from a court or a warrant from a court. So our two authors have written the paper on drones, and their solution or their comment to the problem related to police surveillance and police activity and the police use of the drone is don't. They don't see the use as being compatible with a free society. They see the requirement, in the federal use of the drones as not being adequately regulated. They do not like the idea that the Federal Aviation Administration is where police would go to obtain permits to use the drones. And what they simply require, the FAA simply requires, is basically the same thing any other private aircraft operating would have to do, which is to file a flight plan. And then the other problem they have with it is that the FAA has been, as I indicated, compelled by Congress to begin to integrate the use of the drones into the national airspace. The last area, or the next area that they looked at was with the Fourth Amendment, and the question, of course, comes up is can the government go peak? And drones will allow the government to gain access to buildings and airspace over property that a person would not normally, and a law enforcement agent would not normally be able to get without a warrant from a court, which is basically an order of saying go search this person and get these items, which are contraband, and then if the contraband is there, arrest the person. So what is the government really allowed to do here without a warrant? And where does the Fourth Amendment deal with this? Innocent and Benjamin both see terrific or real potential here for abuse, particularly with the warrantless searches. They see law enforcement as potentially abusing this, particularly where drug enforcement is concerned. And I will say this with drug enforcement, over my career as a police officer, I did eventually evolve more to the libertarian way of looking at drug enforcement, because one of the problems with it is that there's a ton of absolutely terrible case law out there that regulates how and where and when police can search, and those rules did not exist prior to these various wars on drugs that our government has engaged in, and in some ways, for what for many years have been considered normal and acceptable police practice. police are no longer allowed to do that, and it's mostly because of the activity of law enforcement agencies and agents as they've tried to confiscate and control the use of illegal narcotics. Now, we also have the potential for government abuse of this in that other areas of government would be able to and allowed to begin to search. For example, in our part of the country, almost every town and municipality and county has, and state government has some type of regulation on the construction of buildings and on what types of uses. For example, residential, commercial, um, are permitted in certain areas of the city, the town, the county, or in that part of the state. For example, Houston, Texas has no zoning, so it's perfectly legal in Houston and Harris County, Texas, to site an oil refinery next to a residential neighborhood. We would find that, now in our part of the country is being unacceptable. But one of the things with zoning compliance is that, and where it comes into play with the use of drones is, and this does happen frequently in our area, is that you'll have somebody who owns, say, a 2 or 3 unit apartment building, or a duplex or a triplex, and they'll cut one of the units up and make it in a duplex into a triplex, or a triplex into a fourplex, and so on. And it's not visible from the street because the entrance and the trash and things are all stored in the back, and they only come out on trash day. So we end up with, your local government could ask the police department, hey, while you have that drone flying over this area, would you be willing to run it by 123 Main Street, and especially around the back of it? And we frequently will see our police agencies cooperating with the code enforcement and with the zoning officer to check on those things. So there are significant potentials for abuse. The last area to look at is now, this was at the time I prepared this slide presentation, it was only being talked about was, will the government be allowed to conduct killings of U.S. citizens inside the U.S.? We do that in war zones, but now we're winding those wars down. And as I had indicated, Senator Paul from Kentucky wanted to bring that to a stop. So he held up that nomination until he got an answer from the president and from the attorney general. So another area where there's a potential for government abuse. So the last area that we would be looking at as far as the organization goes would be, what are my opinions, and why do I think the way I'm thinking about this issue of the law enforcement and public safety's use of the drones. My opinion, well, there are certain activities with the drones I would not mind seeing the police use. I think they have an important role that could be put into play, especially where search and rescue, where some crowd control, where police would be using helicopters, say, around the airports and other areas where airspace is crowded, and there would be a legitimate use of the device there. But right now, I do believe that the Fourth Amendment concerns that Innocent and Benjamin brought up are valid. The drones can be flown over and close to buildings. I certainly wouldn't want the police flying a drone up alongside my bedroom window with an infrared camera and having a peek. I would not want to see the police flying the drones along interstate highways or something along those lines for speed control. I wouldn't want to see the law enforcement agencies allowed to fly them over private property um, for any purpose on a fishing expedition, I guess, so to speak. But I certainly um, wouldn't want my right to be secure in my residence and in the area immediately around my residence, and to have some kind of privacy there. Um, so I think the Fourth Amendment concerns are valid. We've given up a lot of rights over this issue of terrorism in our country, especially since 9/11. For those of you who have come of age during this past 10 years, and what I mean is if you were about 10 or 11 years old on 9/11 and now you're in your late teens, early 20s, it still irks the hell out of me at times that, I have to be subject to the TSA searches to get on an airplane. That I can't ship something across the country without having to worry about TSA going through it. Air travel is very invasive. If you think about it, you have these pat downs, the x-rays, you've got to have photo ID. The government knows where you're going and what you're doing because they're, beginning the search for terrorists, probably from the moment the plane ticket is bought, although publicly they're not saying that. It's extremely hard now to pay for anything with cash while you're traveling. For example, if you go on to Spirit Airlines and fly from Atlantic City to, say, Fort Lauderdale or Orlando or Atlanta or Chicago, without a credit card, and I've seen the same thing now on Delta and United. Um, no credit card, you don't get a Coke. And come on, I need a, if I want a drink on an airplane, or I want a snack on an airplane, I have to have a credit card or I can't buy it. And what the government there is doing is they're creating a paper trail, and with that paper trail, you can be followed around. Um, you would be absolutely shocked at what your cell phone will tell about you. Many of you have the iPhones. Just download that app that says "Find My iPhone." Well, that little surveillance thing there of "Find My iPhone." It also, not only works for you to be able to find your iPhone, it also, your phone leaves a trail wherever you go. So, for example, if you got into your car and say you wanted to drive down to Florida to see Mickey Mouse at Disney World, you get in the car and drive down there, and if you don't turn your phone off, every cell phone tower from here to Orlando picks up where you are and what time you've been there and what time your phone disconnected from that tower and what time it connected to the next one. So, this was not intended to be a country where you were going to need papers to travel from state to state, where you were going to need travel permits, and it's come to that. So, think about this even on domestic flights now. I flew from the West Coast to the East Coast, and nearly everybody presented a passport as a form of identification when they got to the airport so that the TSA guy signs off on your ticket. Well, you never did that before. There was a time where you could walk into an airport with cash for the plane ticket and walk in and buy the ticket at the desk, and while the plane was boarding, they would print out the ticket and you get on the ticket and get ready to fly. So, we we really have allowed an incredible amount of government intrusion into our lives. One of the areas too that comes about with this is that with TSA, and many of the young ladies in the class who have flown recently will be able to identify with this. With no probable cause, you have a government agent that's basically able to perform a pat-down search on you, your children, your mother, your father, or anybody else that goes to get on an airplane because your ticket's got the code on it. So, you know, let's, we really should be considering what we're allowing the government to do here. Uh, One last area that I do want to touch on before I wrap this up is going to be the Chief Justice Roberts issued his the deciding opinion on Obamacare, and one of the things that he said that was incredibly, I think, wrong-headed in a lot of ways with the opinion that he released on the constitutionality of Obamacare, and that was simply this. He made a comment in that opinion that the public should not expect the court to protect the people against bad political decisions. Well, we've had a history of the country engaging in bad political decisions. In fact, we fought a civil war over it, and nearly 500,000 Americans were killed trying to decide how to resolve a series of bad political decisions related to whether one American could hold another American in bondage. It took 500,000 deaths to figure that question out. It took major riots all up and down the East Coast. The timing of the professional policing and professional police agencies developing in the United States, while many academics point to the growth in the cities and the Industrial Revolution as the proximate cause bringing about the advent of the modern American police force, it was really a little more practical than that. The draft trucks used to, the draft carts, horse and cart used to go through the Irish ghettos in Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and draft mostly poor Irish immigrants into the army as conscripts to fight the Civil War, and it created tremendous problems in the cities when the army did this. So to maintain order, the reason why you see so many of these police forces starting in the late 1850s and early 1860s is that as the country geared up for the Civil War, which everyone pretty much knew was coming, government action created a lot of the problems in the cities at the time. So we should be paying attention to what our government is doing. The last thing here, we have to take a look at the warrant requirements, and if you look at the Obamacare decision again, going back to that, the court is allowing the government to compile an incredible amount of personal data and an incredible amount of history on citizens in the country, all without a warrant. And this was deemed, less than 10 years ago as completely inimical to the concept of a modern free state. And what other rights are we going to be giving up with the drones? Are we all going to have to be out there like that crazy guy putting tinfoil on the on our house windows, so the government's not flying a drone in there to take a peek? And if you think I'm kidding you with these, just keep in mind that one of the every year in Pennsylvania there's a dove hunt that takes place in one of the animal rights groups used a series of drones to try to document it, and we ended up with a situation where law enforcement had to be called in because the people attending the hunt, instead of turning their firearms on the doves that were being released from captivity, they ended up turning them on the drone that was flying overhead, photographing the event. So we get on to the next thing here, where, in my opinion, the drone use should be limited. Law enforcement agencies should not be allowed to just put the drone airborne without having to file a flight plan in advance, and those flight plans should be public information, um, like any other aircraft. I don't think that the government should be, and that this is at the state, federal, and local level. Government should not be out there, using the drones and making the claim that the privacy concerns of the average American citizen should fall by the wayside for the greater good and to increase our security. In emergent cases, for example, where there be a forest fire, or a house fire, or a building fire, or if we had a lost child or something along those lines, there's no reason the government agency using the drone should not be able and required to file a flight plan after the emergency is over, and within a reasonable period after that flight was completed. But ordinary use of the drone, they shouldn't be flying over residential neighborhoods and dropping the drone in just so that they can have a peek in your backyard. So that'll pretty much finish up where my opinion goes on the drones. Their use, in my view, should be limited, and they should be treated like any other user of an aircraft, with the exception that in the case of an emergency, the police would be able to go out and file the flight plan, say within 24 or 48 hours after the flight took place. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide now and finish this up. Okay, as far as delivering your assignment, you can go ahead and email it over to my email address, which is the txo0005@mail.widener.edu. You could also post it in the Campus Cruiser area. I can work with the following formats: the WordPad, which will put it into a text; Microsoft Word, which will put it into a text; a DocX, a doc, or a rich text format. If you're using WordPerfect, or especially a current version of WordPerfect, I'm going to ask you if you would save your files in a RTF. That .rtf is the rich text format. That will allow the formatting that you put in the document to remain, and will also allow me to open it up in Microsoft Word. I'm currently using Word 2010, and anything that you submit to me in as a DocX, a doc, or a rich text format, I can work with. If you don't have access to those, the Adobe PDF is also workable. And worst case scenario, just prepare the document in whatever word processor you're using, and copy it into the email word processor, and you can submit the assignment in the format that you're as an email, and that would be fine. If you have any questions, of course, email me, and this should pretty much cover everything you need to do with the assignment. And if you have any feedback on the video, please drop a comment to me. And when the course evaluations come out, it is helpful for me to know if these videos do help out with your preparation of assignments and clear things up. I do use the evaluations for that purpose, and you should be aware that one of the reasons why this is being done as a video is that rather than do what I had been doing, which would be sometimes 2 and 3 classes of spending 35 minutes to an hour on going over this and then re-going over it, this gives you an opportunity to get to the video, and if you've missed anything, you can deal with it there. I do use the evaluations for that purpose, and this did pop up. The first time I used a video was during a snowstorm to cover a lecture, and I did get generally positive feedback on that. So if you have any comments on it, I'd appreciate hearing them. Thank you. Also, to finish up, here are 2 photographs of police and law enforcement type drones, and if one notes the small size of them, you should be starting to get the idea how easy it is for law enforcement agencies, one, to acquire the devices, transport them to where they need to be used, and also to see how close they would have to get to you to allow you to actually see them. And keep in mind, these drones would be able to stay aloft for at least several hours.